Hello students, welcome to a new lecture of chemical bonding. In the last class we were discussing about how Lewis structures can be used in describing or representing the molecule which attains octet rule, right? Every element, every atom in a molecule tries to attain the octet configuration either by losing an electron or by gaining an electron or sometimes by sharing an electron, right? Sharing can be done in three different ways. If only one electron pair is shared by both the atoms, they form a single bond. If two electron pairs are shared by the atom, it forms double bond, and if three electron pairs are shared between two atoms, it gives rise to a triple bond. That we have seen, and all of that was based on octet rule, right? So you are utilizing octet rule to explain the stability of most of the molecules, but that does not mean that octet rule is universal and can be applied for all the molecules. Even octet rule also has limitations. What are the limitations of octet rule, right? Till now whatever examples we have seen was following the octet rule in becoming more stable, right? But there are certain molecules which are having incomplete octet. There are certain molecules in which octet is incomplete, and that molecules have an element like lithium chloride, right? In lithium itself, how many valence electrons are present? Lithium belongs to first group, so the number of valence electron which lithium has is 1, and number of valence electron which chlorine has are 7. So lithium give 1 electron and chlorine give 1 electron, and that pair is shared between both of them, giving rise to lithium chloride. After the bond is formed, if you count the number of electrons surrounding lithium and count the number of electrons surrounding chlorine, you will observe that though chlorine is getting the octet satisfied 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Around chlorine 8 electrons are coming, but around lithium octet is not complete. Lithium is surrounded by only a pair of electron, and is it a complete? It's not complete octet. In a molecule, some atoms are having octet and others don't. That means the octet is incomplete, right? So octet is not universal to all the molecules. Same way, beryllium dihydride, lithium chloride is one example. Beryllium dihydride. Beryllium belongs to second group of the periodic table, and it has how many valence electron? 2 valence electron, right? Beryllium has 2 valence electrons, so I kept 2 dots around beryllium, one on one side, other on the other side, and it combines with 2 hydrogen. Each hydrogen has how many valence electron? Each hydrogen has 1 electron. So what did I do? Around beryllium I kept 2 dots indicating 2 valence electrons, and around hydrogen I kept 1 dot indicating 1 valence electron for each hydrogen. So now how will the bond be formed? The bond is formed by sharing a pair of electron between this hydrogen and beryllium, and by forming by sharing a pair of electron between this hydrogen and the beryllium, right? So now after the bond is formed, if you count the number of electrons beryllium is surrounded with, you will see that beryllium is surrounded with 1, 2, 3, 4 electrons only. Therefore the octet is incomplete, right? Same way, boron trichloride, right? In boron trichloride, boron belongs to which group of the periodic table? Third group, right? Or 13th group, in which boron has 3 valence electrons, right? Boron has 3 valence electrons, and that boron has 3 valence electrons, and each boron atom reacts with 1 chlorine. So what did I do? Around boron I kept 3 dots indicating that boron has 3 valence electrons. But how many valence electrons are present around each chlorine? Chlorine belongs to 7th group, so it has 7 electrons. 1 dot I already kept. Let me keep the other 6. Right? So each chlorine has 7 electrons. 7 electrons. Right? 6 plus 1 7, 6 plus 1 7, 6 plus 1 7. Around each atom I kept the number of valence electron it has. So now what happens? Sharing of a pair of electrons. These two electrons form one pair, therefore one bond. These two electrons form one pair, therefore one bond. And these two electrons form one pair, therefore one bond. So boron is making 3 bonds, 3 covalent bonds or 3 sigma bonds with 3 chlorine atoms. Now after the bond is formed, you count whether octet is complete or incomplete. If you count the octet of chlorine, chlorine is surrounded with 8 electrons, 7 electrons of itself and 1 came from boron. Same way this chlorine also 7 electrons of itself and 1 came from boron. Same way 7 electrons of itself and 1 came from boron. So now each chlorine has got its octet satisfied. How about boron? Boron is now surrounded with how many electrons? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So is the octet satisfied? No. The boron octet, boron, the central metal of boron trichloride is not having its octet fully satisfied. So right. So in these molecules in which octet is incomplete, you cannot tell that as octet is incomplete the molecule is unstable. That means that octet rule cannot be used as a scale to measure the stability of all the molecules. Though for most of the molecules it gives the stability, but it cannot be used as a scale for measuring the stability of all the molecules, because there are some molecules in which even though octet is incomplete but they are a stable molecule. Which are those molecules? Lithium chloride, beryllium hydride and boron trichloride, right? In these molecules even though octet is incomplete but they are stable. Is octet helping us to give the stability to all the molecules? No, not always. In most of the cases it may, but not always. So that is the limitation of octet. What is the second limitation of octet? Is in some molecules and you will see that incomplete octet comes from that molecules in which the elements of the second period, first 3 elements of the second periods are coming, right? The next limitation is not incomplete octet, rather expanded octet. What does it mean by expanded octet? Is in the elements of the third period, in the elements of the third period, not second but third period, the molecules which form are PF5 or SF6, this type of molecule, SO4 minus 2, all these type of molecules in which the central atom is coming from the third period of the periodic table, whether phosphorus or sulfur, right? These atom, which atom? Central atom, it belongs to which period? Third period. In the periodic table, first period means first shell, 1s2 only will come. Second period means 1s2, 2s2, 2p6 will come. Third period means 2s2, 2p6, 3s2, 3p6 and even 3d also will come, right? 3d orbital starts coming from which shell or from which period? Third period, right? D orbitals are starting to come from third period, right? So in phosphorus, even though what is its electronic configuration? Its electronic configuration is 3s2, 3p3, right? This is the electronic valence electronic configuration of phosphorus. It has 5 valence electron. Apart from these orbitals in which electrons are there, it also has 3d orbitals, even though 3d orbitals don't have any electrons, but 3d orbitals are there. Can you find any 3d orbitals in any other type of elements? Can you find 3d orbital in carbon or nitrogen? No, 3d orbitals will come only from third period. Whether electrons are there in that d orbital or not, that is the different story, but they are there empty. They are there empty. If they are empty, that means electrons can be added in that empty orbitals, right? Same way, even sulfur SF6 also has that same capacity, in which 3s2, 3p4 and 3d orbitals are empty, right? 3d orbitals are empty, is that possibility is present in these type of molecules, right? So if 3d orbitals are empty and how many fluorines are present around phosphorus? There are total of 5 fluorines, right? So around phosphorus, how many valence electrons are present? 3 plus 2, 5, right? But whenever that happens, when these 3 electrons are valence electrons which are present, apart from these 5 electrons, fluorines, apart from these 5 electrons, fluorine having so many, fluorine belongs to 7th group element, it has how many valence electrons? 7 valence electrons. Fluorine can give their extra electrons into the empty d orbitals. As the d orbitals are empty, fluorine can give their electrons into the empty d orbitals. So by utilizing their d orbitals, by utilizing their empty d orbitals through hybridization, of course, by utilizing the empty d orbitals to form a bond with pf5, what happens is octet is getting expanded. Octet is getting expanded. Octet actually involves which orbital? ns and p, whether 2s 2p or 3s 3p, but ns and p together makes 8 electrons, right? But in this case what is happening is, apart from s and p, even d orbitals are also getting involved in making the molecule stable. That means what is happening to the octet? It is getting expanded. In phosphorus as well as in sulfur, you will find the same case in which octet is expanded, right? So this is also one of the limitation of octet rule, in which octet gets expanded, right? Where it happens? PF5 and SF6. And it's not necessary that wherever sulfur is present, octet gets expanded. In some cases only octet gets expanded in sulfur, because there are other molecules of sulfur also, like sulfur dioxide, in which octet will not be expanded, right? Because there are no one to donate electrons, that's why octet won't be expanded in this molecule. But here fluorines can donate the electron, therefore octet gets expanded, not in all the molecules having sulfur. Okay, so now you copy this and then we will move on to the next topic. So now after seeing the octet rule and its limitation, let us move on to some important parameters which are useful for us in determining the stability and the geometry and the shape and hybridization of the molecules. And the first parameter is bond length, right? Same way the next parameter is bond order, and the next parameter is bond angle, and the next parameter is bond enthalpy. Right? Let us discuss each in detail. Okay? What does it mean by bond length? Bond length you must already know from periodic table, right? Bond length means the distance between, suppose, and in all the cases you have to imagine that the bond is covalent bond only, not ionic bond. Okay? From now on, from octet rule onwards, after the octet rule gets over, most of the molecules which we are studying or any topic here is imagined to be covalent bond only, whether single, double or triple. Mostly ionic bonds won't come. If it come, I will specify. Okay? So now bond length means the distance between one atom and the next. So how can you measure the distance between two atoms who are sharing a pair of electrons? You cannot do so. So what is the best way to measure the bond length is, you calculate the radius of one atom which is combining and the radius of another atom which is combining. Suppose it is A and it is B. Right? If you add the radius of one atom and the next atom, what will you get? Bond length. But radius of atom A, what does it mean by radius of A? Distance between the center of the nucleus of that atom till the valence electron, that is nothing but the radius of atom A. And radius of atom B is same way, distance between the center of the nucleus till the valence electron, that is the radius of atom B. If you add the radius of atom A and atom B, will you simply get the bond length? You will not get. Why? Because there can be some molecules in which atoms are close to each other, or there can be some molecules in which atoms are far away from each. Suppose you will get, this is a molecule in which A and B are close to each other. Another molecule in which atoms can be far away from each other. You can have different molecules based on their electronegativity. Some molecules have atom close to each other and some molecules have atoms away from each other, right? So, just by adding the radius of atom A and B will not give you the exact distance between two atoms or the exact bond length. Bond length means from nucleus of one atom to the nucleus of other atom, how much distance is there, that distance should be taken as bond length, right? So, that is not always same of adding Ra and Rb, because some atoms can have, some molecules can have atoms side by side. If they are immediately side by side, then you can add the radius and that is nothing but bond length. But can you see all the atoms have the same type of arrangement? No. In this molecule, A and B is a little away from each other, and the next molecule A and B is far away from each other. So, apart from radius of those two atoms, even electronegativity of those two atoms is also important in determining whether their bond length is more or less. Because if their electronegativity is more, that means they will be very close to each other and then the bond length will be almost this only. But if their electronegativity is less, they will be away from each other and their bond length increases, right? So, the exact formula of bond length is this is the exact formula of bond length, in which apart from radius you also have to add the electronegativities of those two atoms which are combining, right? This is bond length. If the bond length of any molecule is more, that means they are away from each other, and if the bond length of any molecule is less, that means they are near to each other, right? After understanding all these, we will see how they are interconnected, right? But first we should know the definitions of all of them, right? Coming to bond order. Bond order means the number of bonds each atom makes. Each atom means, that does not mean you have to count the number of bonds of all the atoms. In the molecule, suppose I am taking the molecule ethane. Hydrogen bonds you have to not consider, only carbon-carbon main bonds. What is the bond order of this molecule is the bonds between two atoms, otherwise the bond between two atoms. The number of bond between two atoms is called as the bond order. In this case, there is only one bond and therefore the bond order is 1. Same way, if you take ethylene, how many number of bonds are present between two carbons? It's 2. Therefore, the bond order for ethylene is 2. Same way if you take for acetylene, how many number of bonds does the 2 carbon has in between? Is 3. So in this case the bond order is 3. Number of bonds you should count, right? In each atom the number of bond varies. In the first case bond order is only 1, here 2 and there 3. I am taking another example of carbon dioxide. Now in this case let us count the bond order bond order of the central atom, right? So here do you have to count the bond order as 1, 2, 3, 4? Bond order is 4? No. It is not always as easy as calculating the bond order as total number of bonds. Same way here you can easily count that the bond order is 3, but here instead in some molecules you cannot directly count the number of bonds as bond order. So there is a formula for calculating the bond order, which is in a total molecule number of bonding electrons minus number of anti-bonding electrons by 2, right? Number of bonding electrons minus anti-bonding electrons by 2 will give you bond order. If you substitute this formula in any molecule, you will get the correct bond order. Okay. So now let us move towards bond angle, right? Bond angle means the angle of separation between the central atom and the surrounding atom is called as the bond angle, right? Or otherwise you can call it as the angle of separation between two bonds of the central atom. The angle of separation between two bonds of the central atom. If this is the central atom, who are the two bonds? These. Any two you can take, either these two or these two or these two. That angle of separation between two bonds of the central atom is called as the bond angle. In this case, what is the bond angle? Bond angle between these two bonds? 120. Here also 120, here also 120. So you should not count the total as 360. You should only say bond angle of this molecule is 120, right? So this is bond angle. The next important parameter which we have to see is bond enthalpy, which means suppose I am taking a molecule like oxygen molecule. If you want to break the bonds between two atoms of a molecule, suppose this is an oxygen molecule, the amount of energy required to break the bonds between two atoms of a molecule is called as bond enthalpy or bond dissociation energy. What does it mean? The amount of energy you need to break the bonds in a molecule, so that you will get the neutral atom, right? That energy is called as bond dissociation energy or bond enthalpy. For this molecule, the bond enthalpy is 498 kilojoules, right? But now I will take another molecule called as nitrogen molecule. For nitrogen molecule, how many bonds you have to break? 1, 2, 3. To break 2 bond is easy or breaking 3 bond is easy? Breaking 2 bond is easier compared to breaking 3 bonds. Therefore, if you break 2 bonds, you need less energy or more energy? Less energy. If you break 3 bonds, the amount of energy required will be more. Therefore, how much should be the energy of nitrogen molecule? It should be greater than oxygen molecule. Exactly how much is 960, right? If the number of bonds are more, that means the bond enthalpy of that molecule will also be more. Suppose if I take example of ethane, ethene and ethine, bond energy or bond enthalpy of ethane will be less because only one bond is to be broken. Here the bond enthalpy will be more because 2 bond gets broken. and here three bonds are to be broken, it will be highest, right? So bond dissociation energy or bond enthalpy means the amount of energy required to break the bonds in a molecule is called as bond enthalpy, right? These are the important parameters which we need to further study the geometry, shapes, hybridizations of all the molecules, which is explained in terms of different theories. What are the theories we have? Valence bond theory, valence shell electron pair repulsion theory, and crystal field theory, right? Most importantly, we will see Vesper theory, valence shell electron pair repulsion theory, and valence bond theory. These two important theories we should know, in which what they will do, by utilizing all those parameters we have seen till now, octet rule, bond length, bond order, bond angle, bond enthalpy, they will help us in determining the geometries of the molecule or magnetic nature of the molecule or hybridization of the molecule. Okay, let us please copy this, and then we will move forward to the next topic in the next class. Okay, thank you.